into the meat of it, I just want to preface this video by saying that I'm a big fan of Frank. I love his music. It holds such a tender space in my supple heart. And there's been a lot of discussion going around of like Frank doesn't care about his fans. Like Frank's just doing this like luxury jewelry to like with us. So I just kind of wanted to give my take and perspective on it because I think there's a lot of layers to this. So let's go. Recently, Frank Ocean has been dipping his toes in the jewelry industry, making ridiculously overpriced pieces that no one in his fan base could ever possibly afford. And there's been a lot of talk surrounding this, like people calling Frank entitled and selfish for not releasing music, and the one time he does put out merch, it's a $25,000 weenie ring. And then on top of that, even if you do choose to buy his merch, the customer service is supposedly so bad that it's driven people to just cancel their orders after over a year of waiting. Some may look at this whole thing and be really upset with Frank. You know, how could he do this to his fans, the people who love and adore his work so much? But that's kind of a really key part, is that these people love his work. It's about his work. Not all of Frank Ocean's fans, obviously. There's a lot of people that, you know, clearly care about him as a person, but there's also a lot of people online that have clearly shown that they only care when he's dropping music next, kind of dehumanizing him to a point. For example, when his brother passed away, there were several people in the replies of all of these tweets announcing the news saying like, oh, this new album's about to be so good, and just making jokes along those lines, which are really just so insensitive. Like, that's so horrible to say, and so many people were saying stuff like that. And obviously there were a lot of fans that told these people to stop making jokes like this, and, you know, coming to his defense about how insensitive and tasteless it is to say something like that. But the fact that anyone's knee-jerk reaction to something like this happening to Frank being, oh, his music is going to be so much better because of this, is just so disgusting. So all of this got me thinking. I've been thinking so much, you know, has Frank ever cared about his fans in general? And why should he, if this is how they treat him? Well, let's go back in time all the way to the beginning of his career. Frank Ocean grew up in New Orleans, listening to Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Celine Dion, Prince, a bunch of the classics. And he dreamed of being a songwriter from a pretty young age. In an interview with GQ, he said, I booked my first studio at like 12 or 13. Somewhere in that season of my life, singing along with the radio became me wanting to be on the radio, you know? And writing Langston Hughes replica poems became me wanting to write like Stevie Wonder. He enrolled to study English at the University of New Orleans, but when Hurricane Katrina happened, he decided to instead drive across the country to Los Angeles with just $1,100 in his pocket. He was actually only planning to be out there for 6 weeks, but he ended up staying a hell of a lot longer. On how he got into the music scene in LA, he said this: one night I went to a listening party just to pick up my backpack from a friend. Next thing I know, I'm in the studio and everyone's putting their laptops on the pool table, playing songs through these big ass speakers. It was crazy. And they wanted me to play, so I plugged in and they were like, oh shit. There were producers there and they said, you should come up to the studio and write. Eventually he made friends with members of Odd Future. I'm pretty sure the first ones he really became friends with were Sid and Tyler. And while he wasn't working on music, he worked a variety of different jobs. He worked at Subway, Fatburger, Allstate, AT&T, a bunch of other places too. And the do-it-yourself mentality of Odd Future really inspired Frank to put out his mixtape, Nostalgia Ultra. He funded the whole thing himself and released it for free. And that's nuts because at this point, he was already signed to Def Jam under the name Lonnie Bro, but they never actually gave him any good funding. He was mainly writing for other artists. They didn't really give him anything for his solo stuff. And then when he released Nostalgia Ultra, they actually tried to sign him again. So he was like, okay, give me $1 million for my next album then. Sign me so bad. $1 million, please. Fork it up. Come here. Take it or leave it. I actually don't know the ins and outs of like the deal that actually happened. I mean, he said that in the GQ interview. So who knows what really happened. Then came Channel Orange. He actually wrote all of those songs in just 3 weeks. But then he took 9 months to like finish them. But he wrote 3, what? That's nuts. And then this album came out and it was a massive, massive success. I believe this is where the friction between Frank and his fans kind of started. Because after Channel Orange, his sophomore album, Boys Don't Cry, was supposed to come out in July of 2015. Then July of 2015 came and Frank didn't release the album, didn't explain why, just didn't put it out. People were confused, but thinking, oh, maybe it'll come out next summer. Then next summer rolls around. July of 2016, still no album, no explanation, nothing. Later on, he did do a live stream with Apple Music, like carpentry. He was literally sawing wood for like an extended amount of time. And this made people assume that the album would come out that following Friday, but then that following Friday came, still no album. No explanation either. Nothing. And this really frustrated his fans, you know? How could you make a promise to put out this album? Everyone loves your music so much, and then you're over 2 years late to put it out. Like, how could you do that and not explain to your fans why this is going on? But in reality, he was going through some, for lack of a better word, drama with Def Jam, the label that he was under. And he was trying to get out of this contract with them. So he had to come up with a master plan. Also, how can we assume that he would legally even be allowed to talk about what was going on with Def Jam publicly? Who knows? Maybe in the contract they had together, maybe there was some type of NDA clause where he can only say so much about what's going on behind the scenes. I wouldn't be surprised. Also, even if he could talk about the situation, why assume that he would even want to? And listen to this quote from the GQ article. As a writer, as a creator, I'm giving you my experiences, but just take what I give you. You don't have to pry beyond that. I'm giving you what I feel like you can feel. The other shit you can't feel. You can't feel a box. You can't feel a label. Don't get caught up in that shit. Frank, for the most part, has always kept to himself. There's always been an element of mystery in his artist career because he just maybe wants to keep some things to himself. I feel like as social media has become such a huge part in the music game, the mystery of a celebrity has completely washed away. You can know what people are doing at all times if they're willing to do that, you know? And some people love to be super connected with their fans, do live streams, talk to their fans, be super real with them. But not everyone wants to do that. Some people still want to keep more of a barrier and more degrees of separation between them and their fan base, because some people just feel like your fans aren't your friends, they shouldn't be your friends. It's sad, you know, like who wouldn't want to be friends with Frank Ocean, but can you blame him, like, for not wanting to just like tell everyone his entire business? Especially given how people were reacting. Like, I was reading some interviews and like articles written at the time, like when all this was going on before Blonde came out, and people were like really mad. Like, people were calling him names and like, just fucking tell us, like, you asshole. Yeah, that'll make Frank really want to tell you guys what's going on. You know, like, dude, he's a human being. He's never put himself out there too much on social media. He's always focused on the music and the rollouts. His persona online has always been so mysterious, but the music is so incredible and so unique that he doesn't have to, like, post an open verse challenge on TikTok. He didn't need to be super public. Like, he could keep that mysteriousness and still be super successful. And if anything, that adds to his brand. Eventually, he did finesse his way out of the Def Jam deal and made the wait so worth it because he gave us 2 albums within a day of each other. Frank was stuck in like a 7-year recording contract with Def Jam, and he really wanted a way out, and he owed them 1 more album. So the way he was going to get out of this was to make 2 albums. He didn't want to give them Blonde. First, he released Endless, a visual album, and this is what got him out of the Def Jam contract. Then the next day, he released Blonde independently. And not only did he get out of his contract, but then Apple Music paid him $20 million to do this exclusive release through Apple Music. So now he's independent and Def Jam isn't taking a cut of that. That's nuts. I also find it interesting because people were saying that this sophomore album was going to be called Boys Don't Cry, but then he just didn't call it that. So here we are now. Blonde is incredibly highly acclaimed. Massive success. Personally, one of my favorite albums of all time. So many people's favorite albums of all time. It's a work of art. But before the album came out, his fans were so frustrated with him. How could he do this to them? Delay this album so many years without any explanation at all. But at the same time, when the album came out, all the frustration was gone. No one really cared about what was going on behind the scenes. They had the music. They had what they were waiting for. So it doesn't matter. It was just about the music. In fact, it was pretty much always just about the music. Let's link back to what I mentioned earlier about Frank Ocean's brother. In August of 2020, Frank's brother, Ryan Bro, was killed in a car crash on an early Sunday morning, and he was just 18 years old. But when this happened, some of his fans had the audacity to just make light of this situation. One person literally said, "This is karma for not giving us any new music." Are you kidding me? Like, you think that that's funny to say. And that person wasn't the only one who would say stuff like this. I mean, when I went back and looked now, I really couldn't find as many jokes making light of the situation. But I remember when this first happened in 2020, when I was first reading about this, and all of the tweets, the news tweets in the replies, like some of the most liked comments were all about, oh, Frank's new album's gonna be so good. And it took a while for the tweets of people being like, how the fuck could you say something like that, to gain traction and for people to realize, wow, yeah, that's not funny. Like, this isn't something to joke about. Thankfully, a lot of people did come to Frank's defense. Now, if you look up the situation, there's a lot of people saying if you're making jokes about the situation, like, you're messed up. But that wasn't how it always was, especially when this first happened. There's no way he didn't see at least one person say something horrible like that. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. Whether it's asking super personal questions or locking artists into insane contracts, people tend to ask way too much of artists. And Frank's rise to fame was pretty quick in the grand scheme of things, but I can only imagine how frustrating it was for him to navigate the music industry. I mean, look at the very beginning of the Def Jam situation. They signed him, but they couldn't be to give him funding for his artist project. They only believed in him when he showed them that he could get streams, that he was a worthwhile investment. They didn't see his potential. They saw the data. And then look at his fans. You know, not all of his fans. There's people who obviously see him as a human being, but there's also people who don't see him as a person with potential, as a person with incredible talent, as a person. There are people that think, oh, it's funny. Like, we can joke about his brother dying and it's karma for him not giving us new music. He's a product. He's data. Like, no, he's not. He's a human being. What would you do if you were him? If you moved to LA and then all this bullshit happens, wouldn't you be a little jaded? I think it's to be expected that business people don't care about you as a person, but your own fans, the people that should see you as just like a song machine. Even if he doesn't put himself so much out there on social media, like, he shouldn't have to, for people to still recognize that he's a person with real life feelings and experiences, and, you know, he probably needs some time to grieve and live. I can't imagine the pain that he went through. So yeah, there's a lot of discourse about Frank not caring about his fans, but I do think there's something to be said about his fans not really caring about him either. I see both sides. Do I think that the overpriced jewelry line is a slap in the face to his fans? I do. Do I think it's petty? Yeah, I definitely do. Do I think he's doing this to be petty? I don't know. I'm not Frank. We don't know him. Like, I think it would be nice, obviously, if he dropped more music. I would love more music. I mean, he's incredible. He's one of my favorite artists of all time. But I don't really blame him for taking such a long break. If he's made enough money where he can live comfortably and not have to make another project for years, why would he force it? Especially if in his eyes he's making this for people that don't really care about him. I mean, why would you do that if you financially don't have to, and instead you can just focus on surrounding yourself with people in real life that you really care about and just living life? You know, we're only on this earth for so long. Again, not all of Frank's fans are assholes, obviously. But I do think that calling him selfish and entitled for not dropping more music is a bit extreme. He should be putting his own self and his own mental health first. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole thing. What do you think about all this? Please tell me if you agree, if you disagree, if you think that his behavior is warranted, if you think that he's being dramatic, you know, just tell me. I would love to know, because this is a really interesting topic to me. I think that everyone should just care a little more about each other as, like, people. Sue me! That's my take. Sue me. I think we should all just be a little bit more nice. We should all just be empaths. Me, an empath. Sensing that for... If you like this video, thank you. Thank you for sticking around for so long. If you really like it, it would mean a lot if you subbed to Songpsych. We upload every week. And if you really, really liked it, send this to a friend. And let me know what you think. Like, please, I'm gonna read the comments. I know I don't really respond to them, but, like, I do read them. Okay? Bye.